Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll just give it another minute or so here. We'll start right at 2 here. Thank you for joining us, and we will start shortly. Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure we'll have some more people to join. So if someone from ODOT can just let them in, please, if we have some new attendees. And I am Lynn Stevens, hello, with the Ohio Department of Transportation, our Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion Division, and specifically within the Office of Outreach. So I welcome you here today to our class number 2 for the Bonding Education Program. And let's see, I'm also going to pull up the agenda. And then we'll let Jacob go ahead if you like.
Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone. Again, welcome back. Again, my name is Jacob Perez, Great Lakes Region Director for the SBTRC, the Small Business Transportation Resource Center. Again, a pleasure to be with you here today with ODOT and Lynn collaborating on this BEP that hopefully you guys are enjoying and finding informative. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. Just remember to put yourself on mute, while the speakers are going. You will have a time to ask questions, but I do encourage you to, if you can, write questions in the comments, so that way we can just prep them and give them to whoever it is that's presenting. Give them a little more time and have an idea of possibly preparing the answer for you, so if possible. But you will have an opportunity to kind of interact and speak with them as well. And as well as I know most of you, all of those participating should have heard from me by now, or Mia, via email or telephone. We do have a couple of people that we still need your statement of commitment. Again, it's just a simple form with the link. Mia will post that link in the comments right now. So then that way you can have, and for those that haven't done it just yet, but you should have gotten an email from us with the link to fill that out. Yeah, and again, we'll be reaching out again to set up some follow-up meetings to discuss more in depth all the things that are being presented today, as well as talking about some of the other things that the services that the SBTRC provides. Okay, so again, pleasure to be here, and I'll turn it over to Lynn again.
Ready. Great. Thank you. Okay, I will just give a short overview of our division. Sorry if this is a repeat for some of you, but some of you may have not heard my spiel here. Okay. As you know, our Ohio Department of Transportation, we are responsible for our state's highway infrastructure and our state routes as well. So ODOT's mission is to provide easy movement of people and goods from place to place. To do that, we will take care of what we have, make our system work better, improve safety, and enhance capacity. And again, I'm with the Office of the Division of Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion. We're a relatively new division here at ODOT. We're in our 6th, going on 7th year of existence, and our Deputy Director is Lauren Purdy, and she's with us through at the beginning. She's the first Deputy Director and continues in that role. We have 3 offices: the Office of Business and Economic Opportunity, led by Deborah Green, and they do all things related to SBE, DBE, EDGE certification, well, just DBE and SBE certification, but they set goals, the EDGE goals, the DBE goals on our projects. And they also handle supportive services, which you'll hear from our new vendor for that, CEI, and also on the job training requirements are administered and overseen by our OBEO office. And then our second office is the Office of Civil Rights Compliance, led by KT LaPlace, and they handle all things related to compliance for regulations for our prime contractors on our projects. So issues ranging from prevailing wage, certified payrolls, commercially useful function, issues associated with the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And then our Office of Outreach, where I reside, we are a liaison for all of our DBEs and our businesses who are doing business or seeking to do business with ODOT. And we hold webinars, workshops, events. We meet one-on-one with businesses who are interested in receiving help to fill out, for example, their DBE or even SPE applications. And we also help with the workforce diversity and inclusion. We have minority and female workforce goals on our projects, and we help to monitor those percentages and ensuring and encouraging the prime contractors to meet those goals that are set by the U.S. Department of Labor. So we handle that a little bit as well. And here is a map of how we divide the state up with our outreach managers. We have, you see myself there in the left-hand corner, helping out with districts 1, 2, 3, where our Northwest Ohio Regional Outreach Manager will reside. And we have James Scales in the bottom left corner, who's our outreach manager for districts 7, 8, and 9. Lorraine Stevens, who's our outreach manager for districts 5, 6, and 10, and the Myron Markham, who's our outreach coordinator, outreach manager for Northeast Ohio, districts 4, 11, and 10. So we'll send out a copy of the PowerPoint afterwards, and you can have contact information to reach out to us directly should we be of assistance to you or can help you with anything. And with that, that's my last slide. So let me go back to the agenda. See where we are. Okay. Mr. Jacob Perez, he mentioned the statement of commitment, and Mia put the link in the chat. If you want to go over any other information about your SBTRC, Jacob, or you want to go right to Tom Quinn? Oh, you're on mute, Jacob, so sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we'll be reaching out to you, following up, setting up one-on-ones with each one of you guys virtually, to discuss, well, some of the information that's being presented here in the BEP, as well as some of the other things going on within Washington. As you know, it's a very an exciting time with the big infrastructure bill passed. So we anticipate a lot of opportunities for firms just like yours, right? But the trick always is how to get that money to you guys, and how to make it accessible to the DBs that we work with. So like I said, we will be following up with you. Please remember that for those that haven't, follow the link to fill out that commitment form. And yeah, but hopefully you enjoy the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Okay, and with that, we will go right into our first speaker, Mr. Tom Quinn with CEI, our new consultant for supportive services for our DBE certified companies and firms. So take it away, Tom. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, can you see my screen currently?
Yes.
Great. So today we're going to talk about several things. The first is going to be being that DBE, being that business that people want to deal with. How do you get there? And the second component is going to be on bidding, estimating, and a little bit about what 1% can do. When we get to the bidding and estimating, I probably will have some people who will say, well, I'm not a contractor. The process I'm going to talk about it doesn't make a difference what the widget is. It's the process you should follow. It might not, if you're a professional services, it might be a little different than that of a contractor, but it's still the process. And the easiest way to explain that is you have somebody who builds a skyscraper, and then you have somebody who wants to build a doghouse in their yard. Is the process any different? Believe it or not, the process is the same. What changes is the length of time and experience and knowledge and information that you have to gather. Obviously, for building a skyscraper is going to be much more. Multiple sets of plans, hundreds and hundreds of pages of plans and specifications. Where a doghouse, you probably scribble it on the back of a napkin, and then you schedule out what you need. How, what kind of wood do you need? Plywood, studs. Are you going to put a roof on it? So the elements are all the same. The process from ground up is the same. What changes is the amount of time. So it should really point to the fact that it doesn't matter what the widget is. It's a matter of what you have to do in that process. Let's talk about business first. So my first slide talks about appearance, how you present, business first, DBE second. And, I try to equate everything that we talk about to maybe a personal experience or family, because as I tell everybody, having a family, I have 3 children, and guess what? Each one of those children, to me, they're a project. And for some of us, we might say, yeah, our kids are really projects. But my kids are all projects. I'm charged with building the foundation that those children are going to stand on in life. And so we can associate a lot of what we do to family. First appearance. Being the father of several girls, first appearance for when their boyfriend would come over was really super important. No different than that of when you meet a prime contractor. I'll give you a short story. I'm going to go back. It's probably 25 years ago. I had just finished. We were working on a project, and my wife, we had our 3rd child, and we needed a bigger vehicle, and we were going to a car dealership, and I told her I would meet her there. I had just gotten off a dozer, and I was covered in mud almost up to my waist. I got most of it off, but I was still pretty dirty. I showed up in a pickup truck, got out of the truck. My wife was waiting there, and we went over to the salesman, and he said, well, we're getting ready to close. I said, well, we're looking for, a larger vehicle. He says, well, there's some over in the corner there if you want to go look at those, but we're just about ready to close in the next 20 minutes. He couldn't take the time to work with me. And, he basically kind of looked me up and down. He's like, oh, this guy's really, not going to buy it. It's just going to kick tires. We didn't even look. We went to another car dealership, and we actually drove home in a different vehicle that night. So appearances really, they're important. Are they important enough to change the way you look? No, but they're important enough to realize they do carry some weight. When I say appearance, I'm going to tell you about my company. We had over 80 trucks on the road when I sold it. You could not tell any of our trucks apart. They were all leaded the same. They were the same color. The tools were all in the same spot in each truck. It was a matter of a marketing ploy that I had learned years ago from somebody. When I only had 3 trucks on the road, they were all painted the same. And what this marketing firm did, they said, put a different number on each side of the truck and a different one on the tailgate. And they told me specific numbers to use. They even told me specific colors. So one truck had 67 on the door on the driver's side, 73 on the passenger side, 84 in the back. I thought it was stupid, but I said, okay, I'll give you a try. You tell me this works. Within 2 weeks, I had people calling me wanting to know when I got so large that I had so many trucks on the road. And I still had the same 3 trucks. So there's another case in point of how appearances change the perspective of what people see. Now, you can change that perspective, but you still have to be good at what you do because, the old expression, it's going to come out in the wash. If you're not good at your field of work, no matter how hard you sell it, it's going to crumble on you. So understand appearances, how you present, and the expression that goes, well, walk the walk, talk the talk, walk the walk. You got to really be able to do that. And I just got off the phone with somebody. We were talking about a presentation, and they asked me, said, well, where are your talking points for your presentation? I said, well, they're in my head. I have, I started as a contractor back in the late 70s. So I have almost 40 years worth of contracting experience. Probably what I've forgotten, most people won't remember. But that's where my talking points come from, because I relate to the different groups that I talk to, because I might have a group of all contractors. I might have a group of all professional services. Maybe my contractors are all civil guys. Maybe they're vertical. So it's difficult to have that written down, but you got to be good at it. You got to know what you can do. Business first, DBE second. Everybody believes that, okay, I'm a DBE. What now? Where's my work? I thought I was going to become a DBE and I'd get a lot of work. There is work out there for all of us. But the one thing you got to remember is the DBE certification is just that. It's a certification. It doesn't really tell me what you're qualified to do. It tells me you're qualified to be able to let me claim credit towards a goal because you're a DBE. You have to sell yourself first. You have to tell me why I should hire you. And when you're all done convincing me that you're the contractor or you're the professional service I want to hire, that's when you say, oh, and by the way, I'm also a DBE. If you're looking to get credit on this project, I'm certified a DBE in Ohio. So you can see a lot of people walk in there and they feel, oh, I'm a DBE, you have to hire me. No, because there are thousands of DBEs that I could pick from. So now what's going to set you apart? So we're going to talk about that on the next slide. Business cards. It's an effective networking tool. It's a promotional tool. More so, the second one underneath that talks about a capability statement. It's a one-page document that helps DBEs communicate their strengths to the public sector marketplace. It reflects your competency, it qualifies you, and it helps set you apart from your competition. Now, first of all, we can assist you if you are a certified DBE in Ohio. We would be glad to help build your capability statement. Now, one of the things you have to understand, capability statements are no different than a resume. Somebody reads a resume, they usually get about halfway through the first page and they skim the rest. Capability statements, we follow a format, one page and only the front of that page, because you have to really put the key components where they can be seen, because a prime contract is not going to read to the second page. The second thing about a capability statement, a lot of people will build their own, because you can just go on, thank you for the power of the internet, type in, capability statement, and the first 6 hits will come up, will be free templates to use. The problem with using the free templates and just going in and filling in the information, maybe 10 other people at whatever event you're going to have done the same thing. So there's a good chance your capability statement will have the same layout, the same formatting as somebody else's. So as a prime, I end up collecting, 24 of these at an event, and I start going through them and I see 2 or 3 that almost look identical. There's a good chance I'm going to save the top one and ditch the rest. So really try to make yours stand out for some reason. Capability statements are required by some projects. They will ask to have it attached. So they're asking for it. Let's make it the best you can. And here again, CEI will help you build those for free. And then ODOT will connect them to your listing in the UCP directory, so that if somebody looks you up, they will be able to download that capability statement. So why is it important to get it right? Because you might not get in front of somebody. That capability statement is going to be what's going to sell you. That's going to be basically you standing there talking to somebody. So the importance of a capability statement should not be underwritten that it's not important. It's just as important as everything else we do. The next item is an elevator speech. And I will tell you, I still struggle with this because I always feel I never touch on all the right points with my introduction to somebody. You know, I could go into who we are, and I could spend an hour telling you we started back 35, 40 years ago. Uh, the original owner was a road and bridge builder, started in Michigan, worked all the way down to Florida. Being one of the current owners, I hold licenses in 4 or 5 states. I've built all the way from New York to Florida. But when I'm done, I'm going to say to myself, oh, I forgot to tell them about this. I forgot to tell them about that. I'm sure almost everybody on this webinar today can think of a time that they were introduced to somebody and they said to you, so what do you do? And you went through a litany of things that you do. And then you shook their hands and said, it was nice to meet you. And you walked away and you didn't get but 2 steps away. And you said to yourself, oh, I forgot to tell them I know how to do this and I know how to do that. So that's where an elevator speech comes into play. If you condition it correctly and deliver it within 20 to 60 seconds with the right information, it should be enough to leave the impression you want on the person you're speaking with. It's interesting, if anybody ever saw there was a movie called Working Girl. And towards the end, there was a scene where I think it was Melanie Griffith was trying to sell the radio station on her idea. And the gentleman said to her, well, you have until I get to my floor, get on the elevator. And she had to sell him and pitch him her idea between the first floor and like the 10th floor of the building. Well, if you know how fast an elevator goes, that is roughly a minute in time. If it doesn't stop, it will travel. It's about a minute to a minute and 20 seconds to go about 10 to 12 floors. So it's kind of interesting that an elevator should be no more than a minute. So think about what you want to say, rehearse it in front of a mirror, listen to it, even you do it with someone else listening, because somebody else might say, well, you didn't talk about that, you do this or you do that. An elevator speech is so important, right up there next to the capability statement. You know, think of it this way. The capability statement might open the door. The elevator speech gets you through the door and gets you to keep the door open for you. Phone service or lip service. Nowadays, most people use their cell phone. And, you know, one of the things I get a lot, I'll call, contractors, subcontractors, and I get something that goes like, you've reached a voicemail box that is full, or you've reached a voicemail box that has not been set up. If I am a prime contractor calling you, and I'm calling you for a reason, I have a project. What do you think I'm going to do when I get a message like that? I'm going to hang the phone up and I'm going to call the next person on my list. And if you don't think it happens every day. Because if I can't get you to sell you a project or let you buy into a project, what's going to happen down the road when I hire you and I still can't get you? The second part of that is we are all guilty of sometimes looking at our phone and seeing a number that we don't recognize. And we say, oh, I'll let it go to voicemail. And then you go listen to voicemail and then you decide whether you want to call somebody back. Trust me, everybody does it. To what degree it varies, but even the people calling you understand that. And it's like, I called you 2 seconds ago and you couldn't answer. And now here you are answering because you want to take my call. And now let's move forward into a project that I just awarded you. And maybe there's some problems and I start calling you and you start avoiding me again. It really sets the wrong stage. You know, if you're in business for yourself today or you work for somebody, that's a major investment. It's not an 8 to 5. It is a 24/7 commitment. And, you know, people say, no, I turn my phone off at 5 o'clock. I can tell you honestly, and I'll give you a story. I was talking with Deborah Green probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I had just finished a class, and it was probably somewhere between 5:30 and 7:30. I was driving home. I had a couple-hour ride. I spoke to her twice that night, and it was interesting because it was a Friday night at like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I believe she actually said to me, our job is no longer 8 to 5. It is 24/7 some days. Now, not to say I'm not going to answer the phone at 2 in the morning. I probably won't answer it because there's never a good phone call at 2 in the morning. But we do work beyond what we are used to, and that's business. Old sayings, strike while the iron's hot. So understand your phone is an important tool. There are no excuses if you're the owner. You have to learn to take it on the chin and figure it out. My employees are very sharp because they know I will pick up if I make a mistake. I'll mention it loud enough for everybody to hear, because we do make mistakes. Own it and move on. The next one: say what you do what you say. Commitment. I'll be the first one to tell you. Does anybody know what it means to buy a project? Buying a project means you bid the project too low to make a profit. You're actually putting money in the till, kinda, to own the project. And a lot of people say, why would you do that? First of all, sometimes it just happens. Second of all, if I'm a larger company and I have enough, let's say I have a lot of yellow iron, that's bulldozers, backhoes, cats, excavators. Whether I work or not next month, if those pieces of equipment are either leased, owned, or mortgaged, I'm still going to have that payment every month. So I have an opportunity to bid a job, but I'm not going to make the profit I want, but maybe I'll break even. But if breaking even means I'm going to pay all my equipment, I'm going to pay my employees, and I'm going to keep my doors open till the next month, I might just do that. Can I do it long term? Not at all. Can I do it from time to time if it's necessitated? You bet. Training and assistance. What a lot of people don't realize is what we're talking about here and what I'm going to go into in a little bit, this is all free training. You know the old expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink? I can't make you dial my office. I can't make you email me. All I can do is show you what's available. It's up to you. Call. We will help you with everything from a business plan to a marketing plan to building a website to estimating a project. Now, when we talk about estimating, we will show you where components are. We will help you with takeoffs. We will not price out a project for you. Several reasons. A, I don't know what you pay for material. For me, I used to buy concrete cheap because I bought so much of it. But if it came to, say, roofing material, I didn't buy enough of it to get a discount. So I don't know what your pricing is. That's going to have to be up to you. I can help you with quantities. I don't know what your salaries are. I don't know what your burdens. I don't know what your overhead is. And the last thing I want to do is put a project together with a number on it, have you win it, and then have you lose money doing it. But we can help you understand the project. We can help you read through contracts. We can help you estimate it from a quantity standpoint. All of that training is available. Sell yourself and sell your business. Craft that elevator speech. Leverage your community. I will tell you, when I was in New York, I sat on the board of directors with a hospital, a museum, the Red Cross, and one of the local zoos. And I'm the first one to tell you, it was nice to do and it felt good when I did it, but that wasn't my initial thought process. My initial thought process was I watched other people who did the same thing and their businesses got blown up. They got so much work because they got free exposure. And I'll be honest with you, it worked. So, leverage your community. It's nice because when I was done, I said, wow, I grew my business, but I also gave back. Collaborative. Now, there's a lot of DBEs out there, and maybe there's a project that you want to look at, but you only do a part element of it. So that's where we can talk about doing a joint venture. Networking. There is a symposium coming up. I would suggest you all get on board. It's in April. It's a great place to meet people and find other people either that can do what you do so you can bid a larger project on your element, or do other elements of a project that allow you to bid a project that you wouldn't even think about bidding in the first place. Relationship building. You know, we all know it's important. It's even more important today. So when we do relationship building, there's a few things you have to think about. A lot of people have tried to connect with a prime contractor in the past, and they know that that prime contractor has his set few subcontractors he might be using. That's all changed over the last 2 years. Some businesses have gone out of business. Some businesses have gotten bigger. Some businesses have scaled down or changed their work type. So don't assume what applied a year and a half to 2 years ago applies today. Those prime contractors could have had a bad experience with whoever they were using, and now that door is open. So, you know, understand that building relationships with a new relationship where you didn't think there could be one might be possible. Stand out and not like others. And that's where we make a lot of mistakes. A lot of people are very quick to compare what I do to somebody else in my business. And I'm not going to compare myself with somebody because I like to think I am unique and different. And that's what you need to go with. You don't need to say, well, they do this, we do this. Cy Sims was a suit company years ago, and his motto was, an educated consumer is our best bet. Don't you think that a prime contractor who is working on a 50 or 80 or $100 million project has a little bit on the ball? Don't you think he's going to know, you know, who you are, what you do? So, you know, understand they're educated. It's the days in the old times when you couldn't figure out prices. Guess what? The internet has made it very simple for a prime contractor to price out a lot of elements, correct? So where do we make up the difference? Labor and service. So labor, it's hard to play with because you want to pay a decent wage and keep everybody employed. But if you pay a really good wage and you get the really good workers, what do you get? You get superior workmanship and maybe good productivity. So paying more money is not always a bad thing. The second thing is on the service side of it. What's your warranties? How do you stand behind? What's your back to the phone? Do you answer the phone on the first or second ring, or do I have to wait 2 days for you to call me back? So those are the things that are going to make you stand out. Product and service. You got to be passionate about your product or your service. I'm going to be the first one to tell you, I like what I do. And, you know, the old expression, if you like what you do, you never have to work a day in your life. Well, I'd like to find that person because I still work hard, but I like what I do. So it's a trade-off. Being the face of the company, you know, you got to show up to get the work. And I know DBEs who have gone to events every week, and in a year they probably went to more events than you could choke a horse. And they said, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. How do you know that next event isn't the one that's going to be the one that makes the difference? You know, getting to know somebody, it's kind of like, and maybe it's different today, but it's kind of like when you date somebody. You don't know if you're going to marry them on the first date. Take some time to develop that relationship, but you got to be consistent. You got to do what we just talked about. You got to be passionate about what you do. You have to show up. You have to be Johnny on the spot when the phone rings. Get your name and your logo right. So many times people start a company and they'll use like a URL for their website because they think it's cute. How many times has anybody typed in a URL trying to find a website because it was something differently spelled or unique to that company that made no sense to you, but made sense to somebody in the company? That you typed it in once, you got it wrong. You typed it in twice, you got it wrong. By the third time, you just moved on. Keep it simple, keep it sweet, keep it understandable. Get it right because branding's expensive. If you need to rebrand your company because something's wrong, it could cost you anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 by the time you're done changing everything from stationery to trucks to websites, business cards, all of that information. So really pay attention to how you brand, get your name, your logo right. Show your involvement in the community, show value, and have a plan. You know, a lot of people don't have a business plan today. We are, I'm going to talk about it in a minute. I'm not sure it's on the next slide, but we're so busy running our businesses that we really aren't running our businesses. We're working in our business. Our goal is to have you run your business and manage your business and let someone else work in there. Where is your best benefit? You know, for me, I can drive a D5, I can use a 330 excavator, I can swing a sledgehammer. I don't paint, um, but I can do all those things. But you know where I do better? When I use my head to grow my business. Where do I find opportunity? How do I expand my work from where it is to much more of a bringing all the peripheral work and grow my business? So think about that. Are you running your business or are you working in your business? The goal is that you run your business. You know, the next slide talks about don't give up and have a plan. I can't explain enough how that is so important, but you have to be committed. Focus on customer service. You only get one shot at it. Do it right the first time. You'd be surprised how much it comes back. Understand networking and word of mouth, how it grows your business. Um, One of the big things that I learned from an old timer was never, ever condemn your competition, because that hurts you more than you think when you condemn, oh, well, they don't do this right or they don't do that right. Stick to your guns about what you do right. Expand your marketing efforts. A lot of times we don't realize, for example, if you're in if you're in mowing for DOT, you probably have the equipment that's needed to get into graffiti removal, seeding and sodding, maybe trees and shrubs. So look, see how you can expand what you already do based on your current work type. We mentioned about websites, and people say, well, I don't need a website. No, a website is probably not how you're going to sell your product to somebody. But what do we all do when we meet somebody new? We probably go to the web and we look them up to see what we can find out about that person, that company. You don't think that the estimator for a prime is not going to do the same thing? Say, well, let's go look up this guy, Tom Quinn, and see who he is and what he's done. So will a website get you work by itself? No. Will it be something that ensures the person looking at it says, well, okay, he really is who he says he is? It will solidify what you've been trying to do. Cut your business costs. You know, here's where, real interesting story back, being of my age, what they sometimes call us legacy workers. A lot of us have gone through some depressions or recessions since the 60s. And I can remember my mother cutting coupons during the recession. But you know what else I remember? She cut coupons before the recession and she cut coupons after the recession. So the recession had no wave and no effect on her. But for a lot of people, a recession forced them to scrimp and save and cut coupons. And then when they came out of the depression or recession, what do you think they did? They went back to the same methods they were spending before. Well, why should that have changed? It shouldn't have. And that's what happens when we get busy with our business and we get a lot of work coming in, or even just one project that we're very busy on, we have a tendency to overspend. Just because your business is doing well is not the opportunity to say, well, we have money to spend. It should be a time when you look at business costs. Finding and keeping the right employees. In today's market, this is very tough. I've gone past retail operations that are paying $15, $18 an hour. I heard that the UPS in Kentucky, which was $15.50 less than a year ago, is at $21 and change per hour today. So yeah, find the right employees. It's going to have to be either a financial reward, or a lot of people do like the personal rewards. Maybe extending the amount of PTO time, maybe more vacation, work from home 2 days a week. There's a lot of different ways that you can build a package that would help find that right employee. I'm going to tell you right now, it's still very difficult. I heard this morning on the news that we're almost at complete employment. What that means, there's still going to be a 1, 2, or 3% of unemployment, but that's always there. That's that unemployable person possibly for some reason. So we're in a tight spot when it comes to hiring and finding the right avenue and the right carrot, as it might be. Updating your business plan. This is, if you have one, you should look at it. It should be for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and then long term if you want to go beyond that. You can't wait till the end of the year. If you see you're not really following it or something's not working, you need to go in and tweak it. You need to see how you can adjust it. The last thing you want to do is have a business plan that is unattainable, because at the end of that first year or 3 years, you're going to say, well, that was nice try, it didn't work, and you throw it out the door. Business plans work. They just have to be written and designed correctly. Make this the best year ever. I have to tell you, when I look at the numbers, new business startups are at over 500,000 for this past year. Bankruptcies and foreclosures on businesses are lower than they were before the pandemic. And new startups are higher than they were before the pandemic. So it's working. It's just a matter of, I did a webinar a couple days ago for a large builders group. And one of the comments was, yeah, everybody was blaming everything on the pandemic. Well, if we didn't have the pandemic, we'd probably be blaming it on something else. So use that energy to grow your business. Find the opportunity. I'm going to go into estimating and bidding on anything. It makes no difference what that widget is. And my first question is, what comes first, estimating or bidding? It's actually neither. The bidding process starts out with, do I want to bid on this project? Can I do the project? A lot of people will look at projects and they want to bid on that $500,000 project. If you've never done a $50,000 project or a $100,000 project, chances of you being able to do a $500,000 project are slim to none. Resources, capital, staff, equipment, all of that's going to become an issue. And all of a sudden, because it's an issue, you're going to spend more money on those items than you normally would for a $50,000 project. So here's what happens. You've now increased your overhead, depleted your profit. Not to mention, when you bid on a larger project over $500,000 or $1 million, your margins get cut to start with because there's more people bidding on it. Who am I bidding against? I mean, how many people actually sit there and say, well, I'm going to be bidding against this guy and I just can't compete with him? The average cost of putting an estimate together could be anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, if not more. So can you imagine putting together 5 or 10 estimates and only winning one project? You still have the expense of putting those together. So you do have to be cautious of what you want to bid on and when. Is the project in my wheelhouse? Well, what does that mean? That means it's something that you're already good at. In which case, it would be a project you really want to be more geared towards going after, because there's a good chance you'll finish it early. You'll finish it on budget, if not below budget. So now you're going to make money on time and on budget. Any advantage about bidding, even if it's a break even? We went over that a little earlier ago. Watch buying a project. That's obviously buying a project for that break even. You can't do it every day. When you're putting together your estimate, so first you decide if you want to bid, and you find out all the information about a project. And then at that point, you can decide, okay, if I'm going to bid it, I have to do an estimate first, because I need to get my numbers to be able to put my bid together. So be accurate when you're estimating, because you know what? You're going to make mistakes on some things. So be as accurate where you can. The mistakes will be less at the end of the day. Understand how much it's going to tie up your resources. We're all about capacity building, but you can't grow quick. Dun & Bradstreet did a study that said that a business that grows over 20% in 1 year will have a hard time keeping its profit. What happens is when you try to grow a business too quick, because you have a lot of work. You end up spending more money on more skilled labor, newer equipment, or more equipment. All of a sudden, what you thought was a good margin and profitability becomes an expense. So watch your resources, watch the size of your projects. So these slides I'm gonna kind of go through a little quicker. These are on the bidding process. So what is bidding? It's not estimating. It's not profit directly. It's not labor. It's not equipment. It's not resources. It's not quantity takeoffs. It's finding out if the job fits what we can do. It's finding out, can we make money? Where would it lead us? What are the opportunities that exist because I took on this project? So where do we find these bids? Well, you can find them in newspapers, government sites, agency notices. Usually this is the information that would be included in those notices. At this point, once I see all of this information, the bid date, the availability plans, where the project is, the size, the owner, I might decide to look at this project and say, oh, shoot, the owner's Tom Quinn. I've worked for him before and I don't want to work for him. So that's where we make the decision. Do we skip it or do we order plans? Now, let me go back there. You see where it talks about location? People say, well, the project's in the next state over, but our borders meet each other. Well, think about the next state over. Now you're going to have possibly put up your staff. You're going to have to find hotel rooms, rent the house for a year, whatever the project is. That alone is going to cost you more than somebody who's local bidding on the project. So those are little things that people don't think about. Location has a big part to do with it. How about your building? So location doesn't matter for now. Let's say even though we're on two different sides of Ohio. So where I live, I'm buying concrete for $300 a yard. Where the project's being built, maybe the concrete's costing me $400 a yard. Well, I'm obviously not going to buy concrete where I am because if it's over an hour and a half away, I'm going to have to throw the concrete away because you can't let concrete spin and mix for more than an hour and a half or 300 revolutions on the drum. So now I'm going to have to buy concrete where the project is. Am I guaranteed that I can buy my material at the same price where I live versus where a project is? So those are things that play into that, do I want to bid this project? Other plans, we'll check them for errors and omissions, what type of work, the quantities, general layout. We'll check if there's federal funding, the working days, if there's liquidated damages. Everybody knows what LDs are. That is when your project runs long or you don't miss certain milestones. Right, we can make our decision. Do we want to bid this or not? Does the project fit our bonding capacity? Do we have the right equipment? Equipment's such a funny thing because a lot of companies have now gone to buying peripheral equipment. When I say that, it might be a rubber tire machine. It could be a skid steer loader. It could be a mid-size excavator. And then what they do is because those pieces of equipment will have a functionality on most projects, but if they need a larger excavator, a 460, or if they need a D8 or a D10 dozer, they'll lease that for that project. Because how often are you going to use a D10? Most of our work is within city limits or confines of a community. You never get a D5 in there, so a D10. So in that capacity, you have to make sure you have the right equipment. If you don't, what's it going to cost for me to lease? Do I have the cash flow? Is the financing good? Again, we'd make our decision. Do we forget it? Or do we now go find the site where this is going to be built if it happens to be a project? In some cases, maybe it's not a site as much as it is an item. Maybe I have a DBE in Kentucky who does safety equipment, and she does vests, helmets, winter jackets, work boots, anything to do with safety. So what was her visit? Her visit was to 2 or 3 different manufacturers to find out if there was a difference, who had more reflective material, who was less expensive, who had a better product. When we do that, we verify in the part of construction, we're going to verify roads and rivers, telephone, electric, engineer, owner's reps. We're going to find out about our vendors that are local. You know, for example, if I'm doing a bid on a job that's procurement, buying product from too far away is going to cost me to ship it. So for the safety vests, you know, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're ordering 1,000 safety vests and 500 hard hats and so on, shipping can get expensive enough to eat into your profitability, especially if you bid the job low. So you can see all the things from a construction side, but you can come up with as many items for almost any type of widget that you might be either building, selling, or servicing. On the construction side, you need to look for overhead obstructions. Maybe you can't get a crane down the street. Underground utility obstructions, you know, see what crosses, see where your gas lines are, see what you have to deal with. Hitting a fiber optic line, you know, could cost you $50,000, $60,000. Understanding the terrain. Making a judgment on the construction methods. Anticipate problems. Now, you know, one of the big things people don't realize is, where's the project? Is it a downtown street corner where everybody's going to see what's going on? So you could build the best project, but if you created enough havoc during rush hour and people can't get home, they're only going to remember you for one thing. So you got to remember, what's the publicities that's going to come out of this project? Final decision. We're not going to bid it. Well, we will. Once we bid it, now we got to go into the other items. We got to identify that subcontractor or that manufacturer that we're buying supplies from. Find out what the project items, that's going to be your scope, the quantities. Now we're into estimating.
In 1.25 miles, keep right on I-77.
We go into pre-qualifying anybody who we're going to be hiring as our subs, bonding capacity if needed. We can look at sub bids, insurance requirements. Here again, workers' comp, that's needed by everybody. So why aren't we all shopping our workers' comp? Why aren't we making sure that we're getting the best deal? Are we educated to know how to really use workers' comp? There's several ways that, you know, people pay the highest rate. So if I'm an electrician, I'm going to pay the highest rate because I'm on a ladder. But what if my workers are only on the ladders half the time during the daytime, and the rest of the time they're working on the ground putting assemblies together? I can actually bid my workers at 2 different worker comp rate. What if I have a working superintendent on the job site? He's going to be at what they call a supervisory rate and not the rate of one of the workers on the site. How about if I have a worker who we pay workers comp to and he takes 2 weeks vacation? That should not be charged to your workers comp because he's not working, so there's no liability. Again, this goes into your securing a bond if required. All your supplies, quotes, expected delivery times. You know one thing that's not up here? If I'm a contractor, where am I going to put my supplies when they come? Do I have what they call laydown area? Now, how about my takeoff sheets, which we'll get into, and this is going to have to do with the estimating. My wage rates. We talk about fringes, workers' comp, GL, Social Security, unemployment. All of these things fall into what we call burden. And if you're not familiar with burden, that could cost you your profit. You know, I've heard people bid a project and they figure, okay, I'm going to have a laborer on the project. He's going to be there for 100 hours and I pay him $25 an hour. He's not costing you $25 an hour. He's probably costing you more, like $35 an hour with your burden. You have to make sure you get your burden numbers right. You can justify them and you charge for them. A simple thing like a pickup truck, an F-350, 250, with all the tools you might have in it, that's going to cost you between $12 and $16 an hour to operate. That includes your tire wear, your oil changes. So even if that truck's, can you imagine the contractor who's got 5 trucks sitting on a job site from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night and they don't move? They're just given so the employee has a way to get back and forth to work and maybe once in a while run for equipment. Well, why can't you have 1 or 2 trucks for the 5 guys instead of having 5 trucks? Because you're paying a rate for every truck all day long. Preparing your bid, putting your materials, summarizing your costs, all part of the same process. Then you turn in your bid. So let's talk about the bid we just turned in. It was a maintenance project, let's say. And it was for $400,000. And I won the bid, and it goes back out for bid. I won the bid. It's a 4-year contract, $400,000 per year. At the end of 4 years, it goes back out for bid. And I decide, well, I need to make more money than I made on the last one. How many people would say, well, I need to make 20% more? Not understanding how percentages work can hurt you. So I want 20% more. That means that $400,000 project, I'm going to have to bid at $480,000. There's a good chance you won't win it. The average contractor today makes about 3 to 5% net profit. What does that mean? If the business does $400,000 a year, it equates to between $12,000 and $20,000 in net profit. Here's where it's important to understand accounting. What that means is all your bills have been paid. You, as the owner, have taken your salary and any owner's perks. You have, at 3%, you have $12,000 of net profit that you will have to pay tax on, and the balance is yours. That is what's called net. That is after all expenses have been taken out. It is the remainder of money that is left to be taxed by the government. Let's use 3% as the average, and you made $12,000. If you increased your sales price by 1%, so we went from $400,000 to $404,000. Here's what happens. On that 3%, that 1% will equate to $12,000, right? So we went up 1%, was $4,000. We made $12,000 on the $400,000, and now we just added $4,000 more to that profit, bringing our profit up to 16%. We had a 33% increase in our profit by adding 1% to the overall value of the project. Unless, of course, our expenses changed and we had more expenses or our labor went up. This can also work as if you bid a project and you won the project. If you can buy the project out correctly, let's say it's the person with the safety gear. What if she could buy her clothes at a cheaper price? All of a sudden, her margins have increased, her profit will go up. We skipped the most important part, and that's estimating. You can't bid without an estimate. You have several different types of estimates. You have square foot, lump sum, cost plus, detailed. What goes into your bid? Everything you see here: material, equipment, labor, burden, overhead, profit, allowances. Now, if you're asked for a bond, it does not go in, it goes into your bid as an expense, but it's an expense that has to be usually picked up by the prime, because it's not part of the estimate for the project. Permits, insurance, your GL, your workers' comp, vehicle insurance. Let's talk about the mistakes that are made when you're doing an estimate. Estimates are done normally 3 ways: paper and pencil or longhand, spreadsheets, which are like Excel, or a fully automated database driven digitizer. And that's where you put a set of plans out on a table, or you use on-screen takeoff, and it's all done electronically. Risks of an estimate containing math errors. The highest risk, obviously, is paper and pencil at 60 to 98%. Medium risk is the Excel sheets, 30 to 60, and a fully automated estimate, 1 to 3%. That spreadsheet, people say, well, how can an Excel sheet be wrong? Garbage in, garbage out. Whereas with a fully automated, you're actually touching points on the plans, and the computer is doing the calculation of distance. There are 5 common areas of busts when it comes to estimating. Transposition of numbers, number 1. As errors of duration, errors of omission. Well, the thing about errors of omission, obviously, if you missed it, it's going to be an error. Decimal point errors. And for me, decimal points is my biggest problem because I try to do my math in my head, and sometimes I just don't move it enough spaces to the left or the right. Errors of magnitude, takeoffs, miscounts, wrong scale used. You turn that scale in your hand, you start taking it off, and you forgot to put it back to the appropriate scale. For those who don't know, on a civil drawing, there's normally 2 scales. There's a scale for the measurements going left to right, and then there's a different scale from top to bottom. Step 4 talks about the 3 common audit checks. Is it reasonable? Do a random sample, and always look at the items that represent the largest part of the projects. Now, you saw earlier I talked about the most common error is the transposition of numbers. There's something called the power of 9. So if you're looking at the screen, you should see I have sets of numbers. When you add 3, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, and 3, 7, 6, you get 399. So how many times have you added up numbers, the same numbers, and come up with a different number each time? Reason being is you transposed a number in your head when you entered it. So using the same combination of numbers, but I transposed 2 numbers. You see 3, 6, 5, 7, where before it was 3, 5, 6, 7. And I reversed the 6 and the 7 in the last number. This time I came up with 4,080 because in my head, or when I hit the calculator, I transposed those numbers. If you take the higher number and you subtract the lower number from it, and you get the difference. In this case, it's 81. If you divide that balance by 9, and it comes out even like it did there, 81 divided by 9 is 9. That is the first sign that tells you transpose the number. Works every time. When you transpose any 2 numbers on a math calculation, if the difference between your totals is divisible by 9 evenly, there's a transposition of the number. What does that do? That helps you find your problem that much faster. I wanted to give you an idea of what we offer here at CEI. What's available to DBEs, the knowledge that we kind of carry around with us every day because we've done it so long. I welcome anyone to call us, to email us, go visit our website. We enjoy our relationship with ODOT. We're finding more and more opportunity to help DBEs, and that's what we're here for. At that point, I think I probably took a bunch of time, and I've covered everything I wanted for today. I will turn it back over.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. All righty. Very informative.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam. I really enjoyed that. I mean, you had some good stories and very relative and practical information. Yes.
Let's see what's next on the agenda. I think our second speaker. Yes, okay, Mr. Sam Thomas. Affirmative action and EEO requirements, how to hire right. So, Mr. Thomas, if you could get ready, you wanted to share your screen.
It should be coming up.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay,
We can see it. Thank you.
very good. I guess I can get started.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
The first thing I want to say is that, Tom, that was very enlightening. I learned a lot. I listened to your entire presentation. And, my assumption has been all along that the participants in this workshop or lecture or whatever you want to call it, the assumption that I make is that you want to grow. That, the Department of Transportation presents an excellent opportunity for you to bid, and you gave some good instructions on that, on new business and grow your business. some of the things that I'm going to talk about will relate to whether or not you are subject to the compliance requirements of EEOC. And if you are a business that's 15 to 20 inside, 15 employees to 20, then you are going to come under the auspices of the EEOC. So if you're not that size yet, well, if you employ some of the things that Tom mentioned, you certainly are going to be given that opportunity. And what I want to do is talk with you about risk management. And you might ask, well, what does risk management have to do with my topic, which is EEOC, affirmative action, and I always like to add hiring right. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But risk management is the umbrella that I operate under, that if we are not, and if you're not in your business operation operating in compliance with EEOC, then you're going to present yourself with the risk of being sued. And to give you an example of what kind of a risk you're involved with there, it's a financial risk. In 2021, May of 2021, there was a survey that was done that determined that EEOC average settlement was $40,000. That's the average. So some could have been 150,000, some could have been, just 5,000 or 6,000, but the average was $40,000 for not being in compliance with EEOC law, and we'll talk about that. At the federal level, when lawsuits are filed, when there's a violation and you're not in compliance with the EEOC guidelines, it's litigated in the federal law courts. And the federal lawsuits, 10% of them involving wrongful termination, the verdicts were from $1 million or more. So it's risky for you not to be in compliance with EEOC. So with that kind of scare, if you will, or risk that you run in not being in compliance with EEOC, I'll get started. And my first slide is up, and it's just equal employment. But I'm just going to go to the second slide. Is that up? And what
Yes,
I'm going
it says agenda. Yep, we can see that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, very good. I want to talk just a little bit about myself, and then talk about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, with emphasis on liberty. Then talk about the Davis-Bacon Act, which was, in my mind, one of the first pieces of legislation that dealt with the issue of providing a level playing field for some citizens in Alabama. And then we're going to talk about, on a larger scale, national scale, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And one of the mainstays of the Civil Rights Act was the Title VII and the protected classes. And we're going to spend a lot of time on talking about that in the context of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission was commissioned by President Johnson in order to breathe life into the tenets of the Civil Rights Act and the protected classes. So just as an overview of myself, I've been practicing law for about 25 years. I'm housed, officed here in Beechwood, Ohio, in Northeast Ohio. Growing up, one of the first things that I learned in the context of my religious education was that all people are created equal. And in retrospect, when I look back on my life and the jobs that I've had, as have outlined some of them here, I think the decisions that I've made in terms of my occupations have been an outgrowth of my belief that people are all created equal, and the roles that I've played has been to enforce those, whether I'm working for the city of Cleveland in community relations, where my job was to enforce laws that protected our individual rights, whether it's police community relations, fair housing, public accommodation, employment fairness and non-discrimination. Also, I worked on a national scale. I was a part of a planning committee that was national, where I was the president of the National Association of Human Rights Workers, and we put together and sponsored a fair housing summit in Washington, D.C. You see some, I didn't mean to flip it that soon, but you see at the bottom there some contact information for me. The name of my company, Gateway Workforce Solutions Corporation, and my address, phone number, and email address. Now, I talked about liberty in this statement that's a part of the Declaration of Independence. This country was founded on the principle of people wanting to get away from a dictatorship and form their own union, where the people and the government would determine the quality of life. And so part of this, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that right is that we have the right to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when I look up the definition of liberty, one of the things that stand out in that is the right to be gainfully employed and not be discriminated against. But one of the first pieces of legislation that had an impact on people's right to make a living and being employed was as a result of the Davis-Bacon Act of 1931. And the Davis-Bacon Act is a United States federal law that establishes the requirement for paying the local prevailing wage on public works projects for laborers and mechanics. And so what was going on at the time, and this is the legislative history behind that, is that the Davis-Bacon Act was passed with the specific intent. And I say specific because when we move forward to the Civil Rights Act more than 30 years later, that relates to the entire company. But this is a specific incident of with an intent of preventing slave wages and non-unionized Blacks and immigrants, laborers, from competing with unionized white workers for scarce jobs during the Depression. In 1927, you had this contractor who brought in migrant workers from Alabama to work on Veteran Bureau building of a hospital in the district of the Congressman Bacon, who was the co-sponsor of the bill for the Davis-Bacon Act. These hirings promoted concern among the displacement of local workers. The Davis-Bacon Act applies to contractors and subcontractors performing on federally funded or assisted contracts in excess of $2,000. And the next slide takes us to that 33-year
Uh-oh, we may have accidentally lost him. Sure, he will back in here. Sorry. He just hit the wrong button. He was kind of new to Teams, but sure, we'll be back here momentarily. Sorry. While we're waiting, I neglected to do introductions at the beginning. So if we could just say our name and the agency or office or business that you're representing, could we do that now? We're waiting for Mr. Thomas to come back, please.
Yeah, so we do that now, right? Thank you, Lynn. I was gonna save it to the end, but yeah, now we got this little dead time here, so makes sense. So by all means, I mean, if there's anyone that wants to just, Mary Kent, I see still here, right? Or and whoever would just like to go ahead, Aya Silva, just go ahead, say your name and the business you're with. No particular order.
Mary Kent, Imported Enterprise.
Thank you, Mary.
Deborah Wood, Practical People, LLC.
Thank you, Deborah.
Micah Flanagan with ODOT, the Supportive Services Manager.
Thank you, Micah.
Lair Marin Markham, Northeast Ohio Outreach Manager with ODOT. Hello, everybody.
Okay, this is Sam. Am I back in?
Oh, yes. Hi, Mr. Thomas. Yep. We're just doing quick introductions that I forgot to do at the beginning. So you can go ahead to your slide and we'll just do the quick introductions and then you can start again. So, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So let's see, I got to.
Elise, Bobby Boyd, Brandon Sethna, Doug Ketrick. Could you just say your business if you would, please?
I want to get off of the.
Bobby Boyd, Debo Enterprises, Inc.
Thank
you. Queens of Trucking Transportation, LLC.
What slide do you The next one. Okay, then that's the one I want now. You hit that on the next one.
Ella Silva or Doug Ketrick. Could you just state your business name, if you would, please? Okay, maybe you're right. Miss Jacqueline, I see Miss Jacqueline. Did you introduce yourself yet? Sorry if you did.
Next slide. Okay.
You all are muted if you were talking, if you could unmute yourself, but other than that, we will just try again at the end. Are you at your slide there, Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, this is where I'm going to start whenever you're ready for me to resume.
Okay, please go ahead. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, we talked about the Civil Rights Act 33-year forward from that specific intent that was back to 1931. And under President Johnson, the Civil Rights Act was passed, designed to, it's a landmark civil rights and labor law in the United States that outlaws employment discrimination. And if you'll notice, the protected classes at that time was only race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. It was illegal to discriminate on against someone as a result of these traits. Let's see. And the EEOC, again, that was created in order to breathe life into Title VII that protected those five, protected classes. And this is what they are designed to do, responsible for enforcing federal laws that, what happened here? Federal laws that make it illegal to discriminate against a job applicant or an employee because of the person's race, color, and it's the same group, but we want to add on age. If you notice, that number increased and to add age. And then the next slide shows what employers are covered by under EEOC. If you have, no, we want to go back. Yeah, if you have 15 to 19 employees, you're covered again, as I indicated earlier. And the assumption is, I didn't hear the overview of each of the different companies that were involved, but I think that some of you may not be this large yet, but so this will give you an opportunity to be proactive. And if you notice, the first line says 15 to 19, and you'll notice the protected classes. But when you go down to 20 or more employees, it has the same groups that are protected, but it adds age, 40 or older. And then everyone is covered by the Equal Pay Act. Now, when we talk about these protected classes, we want to relate to the individual employee that feels that they have been victimized either as an applicant or as an employee. Well, what this slide says is that if they feel that they've been discriminated against because of who they are, what their traits are, they have the burden of proof in taking the first step in the charging process. They must establish a prima facie case, the first impression of discrimination, meaning that sufficient evidence is provided to the court, support the case, and allow the charging parties to present their claim. And some of the timelines that are necessary in order to present that claim is the charging party has 180 days from the date of an incident to file the charge with the EEOC. Now, if the person feels that they've been discriminated because of pay, they're not being paid equal to what a man would make or vice versa, then they have 180 days from the incident in order to report it or file their charge. But remember that each time they get paid, that unequal amount, then that 180 days starts all over again. If it's a federal charge, it's 45 days in order to contact an EEO counselor in order to make the charge. And now this application, in order to make out the complaint, you can blow it up and you'll see that, it causes, for you to put down the demographics, you list the name of the company, you list the job that you're in, and finally, I shouldn't say finally, but it does include you giving an explanation as to why you think that you have been discriminated against. And that's presented to the staff at the EEOC. And what the EEOC will do with that is, if you'll see where I'm pointing, the charge is filed. And once the charge is filed, then the staff can take any number of different steps. Hold on one second. Where is the, hold on one second.
Do you want to mute it? Screen off.
Okay, I still have voice. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Mhm.
Okay, very good. So the charge is filed, and as I indicated, the staff has the duty at that point to evaluate it by virtue of conducting an investigation with the employer to see if there's a need to continue with the charge or dismiss it based on what is found out. Now, if the staff at the EEOC determines that there's not enough information in order to proceed, they can dismiss the charge, but that individual employee still has the right in order to pursue it in federal court. And remember, we talked earlier about the federal courts, and that's where, if it's litigated, these charges are filed. It's conceivable that even if they do find that there is a prima facie case of discrimination, there are still some remedies that can be sought short of going into litigation in the federal court. And that's through mediation or conciliation. And if you remember, I said earlier that EEOC has an average settlement of $40,000, and that can be determined through mediation and or conciliation. But in the final analysis, either it's going to end up as dismissed, or it's going to be resolved through mediation or conciliation, or it's just going to go to the federal courts in order to be litigated. In the next slide, if I can get my, we want to talk about the protected classes. We've been talking about those that can bring charges in the context of employment, and the protected. So Title 7, and as you can see, the list of protected classes under the Civil Rights Act of '64 prohibits employment discrimination in virtually every employment circumstance on the basis of race, color, religion or creed, national origin and ancestry, sex, including gender, pregnancy, sexual orientation, gender identity, physical, oops, what happened there? You'll have to forgive me. This is a new computer. It's not even 24 hours old, and it's very sensitive. But anyway, it goes on to list the other protected classes: physical and mental disability, veterans, genetic information. And you see I've added here retaliation. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. And the next bullet points, is just a repeat of which employers are covered, 15 or more employers. But then if you have 20, then you add the age or the age discrimination. 40 years of age or over is protected. This graphic here shows you the number of discrimination that were alleged for 19, it compares to years 2019 and 2020. And you can see that the highest number has to do with retaliation. And we're going to talk about retaliation more. And then you can see the other protected classes as well. And we're going to go through now the protected classes, starting with retaliation, a definition, and how some are resolved in the federal courts that go all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, or a settlement with EEOC. But again, retaliation is the most frequent issue alleged by federal employees, and most common discrimination findings in the federal sector cases. Retaliation occurs when an employee is fired, demoted, harassed, or otherwise retaliated against for filing a complaint of discrimination. And in this particular case, we have the young lady who was actually, I think she was the only woman working in this particular railroad company. And she complained of being harassed by her supervisor. And as a result of the complaint, she was moved from her duty to a forklift operator, which is to a less desirable duty as a track laborer. Though her job classification remained the same, she was also suspended for 37 days. Well, eventually they restored her employment, and they gave her reimbursement for that time. But the lower court found for the charging party, and this was appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States, and the Supreme Court of the United States upheld the lower court's ruling, but not that she was fired, but that she was transferred to a position that was less desirable. And they deemed that to be punishment and harassed and retaliated against. The next protected class is disability. Here, it's legal and prohibited for an employer for treating you differently or less favorably because you are a friend, family member, parent, or someone else you're associated with has a disability, has a history of once having a disability, or is treated as having a disability. And to summarize what happened here, you have these twin sisters, and they apply for a job with an airline. And the airline has a requirement, and that requirement is that you must have 20/20 or better eyesight. Well, these twins had, as you can see, very bad eyesight, and but it was correctable by by eyeglasses. And in the final analysis, what EEOC did to settle this was they said that let's see. Did I get off the slide? Yeah, I got off the slide. I'm back to the slide now where it says that the uncorrected was 20 to 100 or better. The law says that it prohibits covered employers from discriminating against individuals on the basis of disabilities. Among other things, the ADA defines a disability as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more life activities. And obviously, in this case, you would be talking about sight. But the two sisters that made charges in this case, they were ruled against in the United States Supreme Court. And the reason they were ruled against is because this disability that they had, it was correctable, meaning it didn't impair the ability to engage in major life activities because it was correctable. So this is an example of how the court could rule in a discrimination case or discrimination based on disability. The next protected class is race, discrimination involving treating someone unfavorably because his or her, he or she is of a certain race, or because personal characteristics associated with race, such as hair texture, skin color, or certain facial features. Color discrimination involves treating someone unfavorably because of skin or color complexion. Can you bring me a bottle of water? A race discrimination also can involve treating someone unfavorably because the person is married to or associated with a person of a certain color or race. And then I thought this was eye-opening for me. Discrimination can occur when the victim and the person who inflicted the discrimination are the same race or color. And here is an EOC settlement. And if you remember in the diagram that I showed earlier, one of the ways of resolving it, if probable cause is found, is to come to a settlement. And in this case, some of the facts included at this company doing business as an enterprise, that there was a $250,000 that was awarded and furnished and to the charging parties, and other relief that was agreed upon in the settlement. Relief to settle a race harassment brought by the EEOC. According to the EEOC lawsuit, these two supervisors and managers subjected African-American employees to daily harassment and humiliation because of their race by calling them racially offensive and derogatory names. So again, it can be very costly if the supervisors or managers in these companies discriminate against someone because of their race. And the next slide has to do with sex. It's a protected class, prohibits sex or harassment at work. Sex harassment includes conduct that is sexual in nature, such as sexual jokes, photographs, touching, or requests for sexual favors, and non-sexual conduct that is based on gender, such as comments that men or women don't belong in certain jobs, or comments, questions, questioning men's or women's skills or abilities. Harassment based on, did it again, on but in the bottom line is the law protects you from being harassed by your supervisor, supervisor in another area, a coworker, and all others in the workplace, such as clients or customers. Harasser can be the same sex as you or of a different sex. And see, this is where I really need to, I've got this, it's right in the middle of, let me see if I do this, if this will. Then we went to another slide. I apologize for this. Hold on 1 second so I can.
That's okay.
You want to be on this slide?
I want to be on this slide, but this thing is still in the way.
I don't know how to get that out of there. That won't do it. It's not a touch screen.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's go back. Okay, so let me remember what this one's all about because I can't read it.
They can read it.
Okay.
I see what the problem is. This box is.
Yeah, this box is definitely in the way. Let's just go to the next slide, but it gives an example of an employee who was discriminated against based on their sex. And this was, again, a court case that was litigated. And if you look, I can see down at the bottom, they entered into a 3-year consent decree and provided $175,000 in compensatory damages towards the charging parties and how it was prorated among the different charging parties. So again, it's illegal to harass because of a person's sex. National origin is the next protected class. The Civil Rights Act, again, prohibits employment discrimination based on a person's national origin. And here's another settlement. This company, there was an allegation, EEOC alleged a class of hundreds of Indian employees in different categories of skill, welders, pipe fitters, etc., was subject to human labor trafficking and a hostile workplace based on their national origin. The EEOC negotiated a $5 million settlement for race and national origin claims. The settlement is a part of a larger $20 million settlement obtained by EEOC Southern Poverty Law Center and other private attorneys for following a $14 million verdict for 5 Indian guest workers. So again, this is sending the message that it's illegal to discriminate against because of national origin. Well, I see you got it set up over there, okay. But it shows completely over here. And so you can see that EEOC is doing its job as commissioned way back in 1964 when President Johnson signed into law the Title VII. And so that's the last of the slides that depict some of the protected classes and some of the consequences of not being in compliance with the EEOC. What I'd like to do now is just touch upon another aspect of what I was asked to present on, and that's affirmative action. And sometimes, affirmative action, gets a bad name, because of it can be viewed as taking jobs from people that might not be in an underrepresented or protected class, and taking jobs away from others that are not in that protected class, and taking their jobs away from them unfairly. So you have to be careful, and hire right is what I call it. One of my positions I had was I was the human resources director for a real estate company, and when I was hired to bring on more minorities and promote women of any color to the management level position. And what I found myself doing was looking at surveying, how the company had gone about recruiting employees in the past, and seeing that it was very narrowly focused. They relied a lot on the referral of existing employees. And what I did was I went to different agencies, employment agencies, different schools that were diverse, in order to recruit a more diverse workforce. And I was able to grow the company from less than 100 employees to over 500 employees over a 5-year period of time. And my goal was to bring in at least 20% of people, minority backgrounds, into the company, and promote women into management positions. And I achieved that goal and exceeded it by 5%. In other words, 25% of the people that I hired were minorities, as opposed to my goal of 20. But I did it right. I hired right. I made sure that individuals that I brought in were qualified according to bona fide occupational qualifications. And that, in doing it that way, you can withstand, the employer could withstand charges of reverse racism. I guess I wasn't to the end of this. The Equal Pay Act, as it, as the protected class indicates, Equal Pay Act, meaning you pay women the same amount that you pay men for comparable jobs. Genetic information, the law forbids discrimination on the basis of genetic information when it comes to any aspect of employment. An employer may never use genetic information to make an employment decision because of genetic information, and it's not relevant to an individual's current ability to work. Genetic information broadly includes the result of an individual's genetic test and those of the individual's family members, as well as the manifestation of a disease or disorder. And here's a EEOC settlement that was rendered against a company that discriminated against an employee because of information that they found out about the individual genetic information. And as you can see, in the consent decree, the employer agreed to pay $125,000 in damages, along with other injunctive and equitable relief. You know, I'm looking for a slide that, let's see. Okay, this is a slide I want to talk about now. So what happens when an employer is charged with discriminating? EEOC and the courts, for that matter, would become the arbiter in making a decision as to whether or not that employer should be liable for employment discrimination by virtue of not being in compliance with the Title VII. And these can be proactive things that can be put in place that will aid that employer. It might not guarantee that the employer is going to get away scot-free, but it certainly can do that. Number one is decisions based on bona fide qualifications, occupational qualifications, provide a legitimate reason for employer to discriminate, if you will, and not hire a person that's under protected class if that protected class individual is not qualified. I had an instance when I was the Director of Human Resources where one of my managers was charged with discriminating against this woman who was an intern. She didn't wind up getting the position, and she alleged that because of her family status, that she had kids, that she didn't get the job. So EEOC did its job. They received the charge that was presented to them within that 180 days of the occurrence of the incident. They brought the employee and, or I should say the intern and the manager to EEOC office and to continue the investigation. And during the interview, it was determined that the intern did not have the requisite skills in order to be hired for the job. There was a clear case or incident that the manager was able to demonstrate in the course of that investigation, in that interview, whereby the young lady was hired as a clerical person, but she did not know how to make a copy of a document, meaning taking the staple out of the document in order to make a copy of it. There were a number of other different instances where over a period of time, she was cited, for these ineffectiveness in performing the job. And so there was they did not find probable cause for this charge, and it was dismissed. The second one has to do with disability, reasonable accommodation, that if you have an employee that will charge you for discriminating against them because of their disability, but you could not be accommodated because employers are charged with being able to accommodate a person that is disabled. But if that accommodation is unreasonable and would create an undue hardship or expense to the business, well, then you'll get a pass. You won't be in non-compliance if you don't hire that individual, if it would create a hardship. And so you demonstrate that it would cause an undue hardship. Number 3, affirmative action plan that includes goals and timetables and documentation of good faith efforts to reduce and prevent employment discrimination against historically disadvantaged and underrepresented groups. In other words, you got to hire right. You got to go through the necessary steps in order to recruit a diverse workforce. But again, you go back to the bona fide occupational qualifications. Number 4, you train your employees and your managers to let them know what the law is, so that they're not unknowingly discriminating against any of the protected classes. Number 5, the employer had a non-discriminatory intent in its decision making. Naivete is not necessarily something that's going to get you totally off the hook, but clearly, if you had the intent to do it, then that's a no-brainer. Number 6, the employee's job performance reviews were not satisfactory for years before the company let the employee go. And if you hearken back to the example I gave about this manager being charged with discriminating against this woman because of her family situation, that manager had documented that this employee work was non-satisfactory. The next is the role or policy advanced of business purposes. For example, a requirement that employee be able to lift 50 pounds tends to have a negative effect on women more than on men. This disparate impact would be justified in a warehouse where lifting heavy boxes would be required. I need the other screen now because this. Okay, I have to move over to the other screen now.
Okay.
Yeah, number 8. Okay, sexual harassment alleged. Yeah, sexual harassment is alleged when the employee does welcome the conduct. So the definition of sexual harassment basically is that the act that's done towards that person, it's unwanted. But if we can show that that conduct was welcome, well, then that negates that charge. And the last one is harassment defense. The employer did not know or have a reason to know that this was going on in the workplace. This has to do with employees, but with their managers and supervisors, the employer is vicariously liable, and it's strict liability, basically. But a pass would be if it's going on with the employees and the employer didn't know or did not have reason to know that type of conduct was going on. And so with that being said, I think that concludes what I wanted to present, and would like to turn it over for any questions and answers.
Okay, thank you. We do have one question that was in the chat here. Is there a statute of limitations for filing an EEOC claim?
Yes, it's 180 days from the occurrence. And the example I gave was if it's a equal pay situation, the person could have realized 3 years ago that they were underpaid. The statute would not be run by then. It would run from the last paycheck that they received. So it could revive it. So it's 180 days.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Feel free to type them into the chat or just shout them out here. You can unmute yourself and ask your question for either Mr. Thomas or Mr. Tom Quinn as well too. Any questions for either speaker or for Jacob or for ODOT? Any questions at all? Feel free to ask. Agenda, we're waiting and just we can see what is our next class. Okay. Great. Well, as you see on the screen, next Thursday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. is the next time we'll meet. We have a few topics on the agenda, so we have like 4 or 5 speakers. So next week will be full. So construction accounting, loan applications and underwriting, improving credit score, access to capital programs. So we'll touch on all those topics next week. Okay. Let's see, here's a question in the chat. Are you able to bond freight brokers? Jacob.
Yes, we are. Yes, I mean, we don't do the bonding, but I mean, that is an option. You know, I can definitely connect. That would be more of a Kevin Keller question, you know, of course. And when is he returning, Kevin? Not next Thursday, right? The following, I think like the 10th, right? I think it is.
Yeah,
To be
February
presented again.
10th. Let me make sure.
Yeah. But yeah, that would be a Kevin. Yeah, yes, it is, and he would be the person to talk to.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Wonderful. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we appreciate everyone's attendance today. Thank you, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Tom Quinn. Thank you very much. Your presentations were very detailed and just very informative. So sure to be helpful for all the attendees. Appreciate it. Okay, and we can share the PowerPoint presentations with the attendees later. And if you have any other questions, attendees, feel free to reach out to any of us. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you next Thursday about 2 p.m. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Tom, for your presentation.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, guys.